I was standing in my driveway holding a garden hose, wearing a t-shirt stained with what looked like the aftermath of a catastrophic chocolate explosion, when the second police cruiser pulled up. The first one was already blocking my mailbox. Blue and red lights were bouncing off the vinyl siding of my house, creating a disco effect that really didn't match the sinking feeling in my gut. My neighbor, Brenda, was watching from her living room window. I couldn't see her clearly. She was doing that thing where she stands just far enough back in the shadows that you only see the silhouette of a perm and the glint of binoculars. But I knew she was smiling. You can feel a smile like that. It radiates a specific kind of cold, self-satisfied heat that cuts right through a humid July afternoon. My son, Leo, who is 8, stopped digging. He looked at me, his face smeared with brown muck, holding a plastic shovel like it was a weapon he might need to surrender. "Dad? Did we do something bad?" I looked at him. I looked at Sophie, my 5-year-old, who was currently sitting in a puddle of mud that she had christened Lake Sophie, happily making what she called meatballs out of wet earth. They looked like happy, healthy kids having a blast. They looked like kids used to look before iPads became the designated babysitter of the Western world. "No, buddy," I said, dropping the hose. It hissed as it hit the wet concrete. "You didn't do anything. Stay right there." 2 officers stepped out of the first car. A woman in a beige pantsuit stepped out of the second. She wasn't police. She had a clipboard, a lanyard, and the tired, pinched expression of a bureaucrat who has seen too much darkness to appreciate the sunshine. That was Child Protective Services. My stomach dropped so hard I thought it might crack the driveway. I'm a general contractor by trade. I deal with building inspectors, angry electricians, and clients who think load-bearing walls are optional for the aesthetic. I don't get rattled easily. But seeing CPS walk up your driveway while your kids are covered in filth is a primal kind of fear. It bypasses the logical brain and goes straight to the lizard brain. "Mr. Miller?" the lead officer asked. He was a big guy, looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Officer Davis." I'd seen him around town. "That's me," I said, wiping my hands on my shorts, which only smeared the mud further. "Is everything okay, officer? Did something happen in the neighborhood?" The woman with the clipboard stepped forward. She didn't offer a handshake. "Mr. Miller, I'm caseworker Jenkins with the Department of Child and Family Services. We received a report regarding the immediate welfare of 2 minors at this address." I blinked. "The welfare? They're right there." I pointed to the backyard gate, which was open. Leo and Sophie were staring at us, frozen. "The report alleges that the children are living in squalor, are unsupervised, are suffering from malnutrition, and were observed consuming fecal matter," she said. She read the words off the paper like she was ordering a sandwich, completely devoid of emotion. I felt the blood drain from my face, followed immediately by a rush of heat so intense I thought I might spontaneously combust. "Excuse me? Consuming what?" "Feces, Mr. Miller. Poop," Officer Davis clarified, looking uncomfortable. "And that the home environment is hazardous and unsanitary." I looked back at the window across the street. The blinds twitched. "Let me guess," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I was trying very hard to suppress. "The report came from the woman who lives at 402 Maple Drive? Brenda?" "Reports are anonymous," Jenkins said sharply. "I need to see the children, and I need to inspect the residence immediately. If you refuse, we will return with a court order and some yes. Enforcement will remove the children for their safety in the interim." "Remove them?" I stepped forward, and Officer Davis rested his hand on his belt. Not on his gun, but near it. A warning. They are playing in the mud. It's dirt. We're building a castle." "Sir, step aside," Jenkins said. She walked past me, her heels clicking on the concrete, heading straight for my terrified kids. To understand how we got to the point where the state was threatening to kidnap my children because of a landscaping project, you have to understand the geography of my neighborhood. We live in a suburb that is currently undergoing an identity crisis. Half the neighborhood is young families like mine, people who bought the fixer-uppers and don't mind a little noise on the weekends. The other half are the original owners, the retirees. The people who treat their Kentucky bluegrass like it's a sacred religious relic. And then there is Brenda. Brenda is not just a retiree. Brenda is a force of nature, if nature hated joy and wanted to speak to the manager. She is a woman who once called the police on the mailman because he walked across the corner of her lawn to deliver a package. She measures her grass with a ruler. I have seen her vacuum her driveway, literally, with a shop vac. 2 hours before the police arrived, I had been in the backyard with Leo and Sophie. My wife, Sarah, was inside taking a nap. She's a nurse who works night shifts, so Saturdays are her catch-up days. It was just me and the kids. We had decided that the corner of the yard, where the grass never grew anyway because of the giant oak tree, was going to become the construction zone. I'm a contractor, right? I want my kids to know how to build stuff. So I bought a truckload of topsoil, clean bagged topsoil from the garden center. Not sewage, not manure. Premium, organic earth. We dumped it in a pile, turned on the hose, and went to town. We were making a complex system of rivers and dams. I was knee-deep in it, laughing, helping Leo reinforce a tunnel with a PVC pipe, when a shadow fell over us. I looked up. Brenda was leaning over the chain-link fence that separates our properties. Her face was a mask of disgust. "Michael," she said. She never calls me Mike. "Hey, Brenda. Beautiful day, huh?" I wiped a splatter of mud off my cheek. "It smells," she said. "It smells like wet dirt, Brenda, because it's wet dirt. It's unsanitary," she sniffed. "And it's an eyesore. I have guests coming over this evening for bridge. I don't want them looking out my window and seeing a pigsty." "Well, good news," I said, grabbing a shovel. "They don't have to look out the window, or they can look at the other 90% of the yard, which is mowed and trimmed. The kids are just having fun." "You're lowering the property values," she snapped. "And that little girl is filthy. It's neglectful, Michael, letting them wallow in filth like animals." I stopped digging. That was the line. You can insult my lawn, you can insult my truck, but you don't insult my parenting. Brenda, listen to me closely. They are playing. It washes off. This is what kids do. They build immunities. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a moat to finish. She didn't leave. She stood there for another full minute, her eyes scanning the yard, scanning the kids, looking for ammunition. "I won't have this," she muttered. "I simply won't have a shantytown next to my property. It's a mud castle, Brenda. Relax." "We'll see," she said. And then she walked away. I thought she was going to call the HOA. I prepared myself for a nasty letter about unapproved landscaping modifications. I didn't think she was going to call the nuclear option. Back in the present, caseworker Jenkins was standing over Sophie. Sophie was crying now, terrified by the stranger looming over her. "Honey, what is that on your face?" Jenkins asked, leaning down but careful not to let her pantsuit touch the ground. "It's meatballs," Sophie sobbed. Jenkins recoiled. She looked at me with horror. "Meatballs?" "It's mud," I yelled. "She's pretending. It's mud pies. Jesus, have you never been a child?" "Sir, keep your voice down," Officer Davis warned. "Let her do her job." "Daddy!" Leo ran to me and hugged my leg, getting mud all over my shorts. I patted his head, my hand shaking. "It's okay, Leo. go inside with Sophie. Wash your hands in the utility sink." "No," Jenkins said. "I need to document their condition before they are cleaned." She pulled out a camera. She started taking pictures of my crying 5-year-old covered in dirt. She took close-ups of her hands, her face, the pile of mud. She took a picture of a plastic bucket filled with water and dirt. "This water appears stagnant," she noted to the officer. "I just filled it from the hose 10 minutes ago," I argued. "We'll need to test the soil for contaminants," she said, ignoring me. "Now, I need to see the interior of the home. I need to see the pantry, the bedrooms. I need to verify there is actual food in the house and that there are sanitary sleeping conditions." "This is insane," I said. "You can't just walk into my house." "I can," she said, her voice dropping to a steely whisper. "Exigent circumstances. Based on the visual evidence of the children's hygiene, I have probable cause to believe the environment is neglectful. You can let me in, or I can call for a warrant and we can wait here for 2 hours while your children sit in that mud. Your choice." I looked at Officer Davis. He gave me a look that said, "Just do it, man. Don't fight this part." I led them inside. I had to scream up the stairs to wake Sarah up. "Sarah, put some clothes on. CPS is here." The next 30 minutes were the most humiliating of my life. Sarah came down, groggy and confused, and then horrified. She watched as this stranger opened our fridge, checking expiration dates on milk. Jenkins opened our cupboards, counting cans of soup. She went into the kids' bedrooms. She inspected Leo's sheets. She looked in the toilet bowls to see if they were flushed. She found nothing. Of course she found nothing. We are normal people. The house was messy. There were toys on the floor, laundry in a basket. But it was clean. There was food. There were beds. There was no feces on the floor, no drugs on the table, no cages in the corner. We sat at the kitchen table while Jenkins filled out her paperwork. The kids were in the shower now, Sarah scrubbing them down, both of them wailing because they sensed the tension in the air. "Well," Jenkins said, clicking her pen, "the interior of the home appears adequate." "Adequate?" I snapped. "It's a nice house. We're good parents. However," she continued, not looking up, "the report was very specific about the ingestion of waste, and the state of the children in the yard was concerning. I am not removing the children today." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "But," she raised a finger, "I am keeping this case open. I am marking it as substantiated concern regarding supervision and hygiene. I will be requiring a follow-up visit in 2 weeks. You are to ensure the children are not left in unsanitary conditions. If I receive another call, Mr. Miller, the outcome will be different." "You have to be kidding me," I said. "You're keeping a file open? Because my kids played in dirt? Do you know who called this in? It was a neighbor with a vendetta." "I cannot discuss the source of the report," she said, standing up. "Clean up the yard, Mr. Miller. Get rid of the stagnant water, and keep your children clean. Good day." She walked out. The police followed. I watched through the window as they got into their cars and drove away. The silence in the house was deafening. Sarah came into the kitchen, her eyes red. "Mike," she whispered. "They have a file on us? A CPS file?" "It's bullshit, Sarah. It's Brenda." "What if they come back?" she asked, her voice cracking. "What if they take them? You heard her. She said substantiated concern." I looked out the kitchen window. Across the street, Brenda's blinds were open now. She was standing there, plain as day, with a glass of white wine in her hand. She raised the glass slightly, a mock toast. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of a heavy steel bolt sliding into place. I am a peaceful man. I pay my taxes. I coach Little League. I help old ladies with their groceries. But looking at Brenda sipping her Chardonnay after sending armed police to my house to traumatize my children? That changed me. I turned to Sarah. They aren't coming back, I said calmly, and Brenda isn't going to get away with this. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, wiping her eyes. Mike, don't do anything stupid. She's crazy. She'll call the cops again. I know she will, I said. I'm counting on it. She wants to play legal games? She wants to use the system as a weapon? Fine. I know how to build things, Sarah, but I also know how to dismantle them, brick by brick. I walked to the fridge and grabbed a beer. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I wasn't just going to get mad. I was going to get even. But to do that, I needed to be smart. I needed to prove malice. I needed to prove she knew she was lying. First thing Monday, I told Sarah. I'm hiring Tony. Tony? Sarah frowned. The guy with the neck tattoos who did the driveway? Why? Because, I said, staring at Brenda's house, plotting the coordinates of my revenge. We need to do some landscaping, and Tony hates HOAs almost as much as I do. The next morning, the neighborhood was quiet. The mud metropolis was gone, washed away by the hose as per Jenkins' orders. The yard looked flat and boring. To the untrained eye, it looked like I had capitulated. It looked like Brenda had won. I spent the day doing research. I dug into the state laws regarding defamation, false reporting, invasions of privacy. I learned that in our state, falsely reporting child abuse is a misdemeanor, but suing for defamation requires proving actual malice, meaning the person knew the statement was false when they made it. Brenda was smart. She probably phrased the call carefully. It looks like feces, or I think they are unsupervised. Opinions are protected. Lies are not. I needed her to admit it. I needed her to say, out loud, that she knew it was just mud, and she called the cops anyway just to mess with me, and I needed witnesses. I called Tony on Monday morning. Tony runs a heavy excavation company. He is 6'5", shaped like a vending machine, and has a beard that could hide a small badger. Mikey, he roared into the phone. What's the good word? You need another patio? Not exactly, Tony, I said. I have a bit of a situation. I need a retaining wall, a big one, on the north side of the property. The north side? That's the side facing the Wicked Witch of the West, ain't it? That's the one. I'm listening. I need it to be legal, I said. Strictly legal, within the setbacks, within the height limits, but I want it substantial, and I need the construction process to be slow and loud. Tony laughed. It sounded like a garbage disposal chewing on gravel. I got an opening in the schedule. I can bring the big excavator, the diesel one that rattles the windows. Perfect. And Tony, bring the boys, the loud ones. You got it, boss. When do we start? Tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp. When I hung up, I felt the first spark of joy I'd had since Saturday. I went to the electronics store. I bought 4 high-definition security cameras with audio recording capabilities. I bought 2 directional microphones, the kind birdwatchers use to hear a sparrow fart from a mile away. I installed the cameras on the eaves of my house, pointed strictly at my own yard, but with a wide enough angle to catch the fence line. I mounted the microphones under the deck railing, aimed directly at the spot where Brenda liked to stand and snoop. I wasn't just building a wall, I was building a trap. Tuesday morning arrived with the subtle grace of a jet engine. Tony rolled up at 6:55 a.m. in a dump truck that looked like it had survived a war zone. Behind him was a flatbed carrying an excavator the size of a dinosaur. He idled the engines right in front of Brenda's house while his crew unloaded. The smell of unburnt diesel fuel drifted across the street, settling onto her pristine porch like a heavy blanket. I walked out with coffee. "Morning, fellas." "Morning, Mike," Tony yelled over the engine roar. He was wearing a neon yellow vest with the sleeves ripped off. "Where do you want the dirt pile?" "Right against the fence line," I shouted, pointing to the boundary shared with Brenda. "Make it high." Brenda's front door flew open. She marched out in a silk robe, looking like a furious flamingo. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked. She had to scream to be heard over the excavator, which was currently making a beep, beep, beep sound that could wake the dead. I walked over to the fence, coffee in hand. "Morning, Brenda. Just doing some home improvements. Since you were so concerned about the quality of the yard on Saturday, I decided to take your advice. We're putting in a professional retaining wall, hardscaping, very high value. It's 7 cents. "In the morning," she screamed. "Noise ordinance says construction can start at 7 o'clock a.m. on weekdays," I said, tapping my watch. "It's 7:02. We're legal." "The fumes," she coughed, waving her hand. "This is harassment." "It's progress, Brenda." She glared at me, her eyes narrowing. She knew this was retaliation, but she didn't know the end game. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I yelled cheerfully. "Everything is permitted and licensed." She stormed back inside. 10 minutes later, I checked the feed on my phone. The directional mic picked up her voice clearly through her living room window. She was on the phone. "Yes, officer, it's 402 Maple again. No, it's the noise this time. He has heavy machinery. It's shaking my foundation. I think he's doing it on purpose. Yes, I want you to come out. He's aggressive. The workers look like criminals." I smiled. Strike one. Calling the police on a licensed contractor for working during legal hours? That's a misuse of resources. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. It was Officer Davis again. He looked even more tired than he had on Saturday. He walked up to me. Tony killed the engines, and the silence that followed was ringing. "Mr. Miller," Davis sighed, "we got a noise complaint." "Here are the permits," I said, handing him a clipboard before he could finish. "Building permit, excavation permit, HOA approval letter for a hardscape modification, and here is the town ordinance highlighting the 7 o'clock a.m. start time." Davis looked at the papers. He looked at the excavator. He looked at Tony, who gave him a polite nod while cleaning his fingernails with a screwdriver. "Everything looks in order," Davis said. He looked over at Brenda's house. She was watching from the window. "Look, Mike, I know what's going on here. She's a pain. We know she's a pain. But try to keep the peace? I'm just improving my property, officer. Can't help it if construction is loud." Davis nodded and walked over to Brenda's door. I watched on the camera monitor I had set up in the garage. Brenda opened the door. "Well, are you going to arrest them?" "Ma'am, they have permits. They are allowed to be here. Please stop calling 911 for non-emergencies. It's a violation of the penal code." "He's doing this to mock me," Brenda hissed. "Just like he let his kids play in that filth to mock me. I know what he's doing." Davis paused. "Ma'am, on Saturday you said the kids were eating feces. Today you're saying he let them play in dirt to mock you. Which is it?" Brenda stiffened. I was concerned. It looked like filth." "Just stop calling, ma'am, unless there is a crime." Davis left. Brenda slammed the door. I reviewed the footage. It was good, but not a smoking gun. She had backpedaled. I needed her to be explicit. I needed her to admit the Saturday call was a lie. The next 3 days were a symphony of malicious compliance. Tony and his crew worked slowly. Painfully, slowly. They moved dirt from one side of the yard to the other, then moved it back. They left the heavy equipment idling for hours. And every time Brenda came out, I was there, smiling, waving. But the real bait was the brown Play-Doh. On Thursday afternoon, I set the stage. I bought 20 cans of brown Play-Doh. I sat Leo and Sophie down on the patio table, which was in clear view of Brenda's kitchen window, but just out of earshot for her, but perfect range for my mics. "Okay, guys," I said, "we are going to make sculptures. I want you to make the weirdest shapes you can. And we are going to laugh a lot, okay?" "Okay," Sophie cheered. We started molding the brown dough. From a distance, specifically the distance of Brenda's window, it looked suspicious. It looked exactly like what she had accused them of eating on Saturday. I saw the curtains move. The binoculars came out. I grabbed a chunk of the brown dough. "Hey, Leo, watch this." I held it up, pretended to take a huge bite, and swallowed it. I palmed it, obviously, but from her angle, it looked like I just ate a turd. Leo laughed hysterically. He grabbed a piece and pretended to eat it too. I checked the audio feed on my phone. Brenda was on the phone immediately, but not to the police. She was calling her friend, Linda. The mic picked it up crystal clear. "Linda, you won't believe it. He's doing it again. They are sitting on the patio eating something brown. No, I don't think it's actual poop this time. It looks like clay or something, but it looks disgusting." Pause. Linda must have said something. Brenda laughed. A cruel cackling sound. I know it's probably just food or dough, but it looks terrible. I'm going to call CPS again. If I keep calling, they'll have to take the kids away, or at least he'll get so scared he'll list the house. I just want him gone, Linda. I don't care if the kids are actually safe or not. I just want that trashy truck out of my view. I told the cops they were eating poop last time, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. If I say he's feeding them, I don't know, drugs? Do you think that's too much? No, I'll say they are eating animal waste again. It worked the first time to get the raid. My heart stopped. Then it started beating like a war drum. There it was. The confession. I don't care if the kids are actually safe. I told the cops they were eating poop, and they bought it. It worked the first time to get the raid. She admitted knowledge of falsity. She admitted malicious intent. She admitted she was weaponizing the state against my children to improve her view. I hit save on the recording. I backed it up to the cloud. I backed it up to a USB drive. I emailed it to myself. Then I waited for the sirens. They came 20 minutes later. But this time I wasn't scared. I was ready. When caseworker Jenkins got out of the car, she looked furious. She marched up the driveway, Officer Davis trailing behind her, shaking his head. "Mr. Miller," she barked, "we received another report." "Let me guess," I said, not moving from my chair on the patio, still holding a lump of Play-Doh. "Brenda said we were eating poop again?" "The report stated you were force-feeding the children animal waste," Jenkins said, disgust radiating off her. I held up the can. "Play-Doh, Ms. Jenkins. Non-toxic. Brown. Would you like to try some? It's salty." Jenkins stopped. She looked at the can. She looked at the kids, who were giggling. She looked at the spotless patio. "Is this a joke to you?" she asked. "No," I said, standing up. "It's not a joke. It's harassment. And I have proof." I pulled out my phone. "Officer Davis, Ms. Jenkins, before you inspect my house again, I would like you to listen to something. I have a security system that records audio on my property. My neighbor speaks very loudly." I pressed play. Brenda's voice, tinny but unmistakable, drifted from the speaker. "I know it's probably just food. I don't care if the kids are actually safe. I told the cops they were eating poop last time and they bought it. It worked the first time." Officer Davis's face went from tired to stone-cold rigid. Jenkins's mouth fell open. The recording ended. "She lied," Jenkins whispered. "She knowingly filed a false report of child abuse." "Twice," I said. "And she admitted that the first one, the one that put my name in your system, was a fabrication to get you to raid my house." Jenkins looked at Officer Davis. "That is a crime, officer. A serious one." Davis adjusted his belt. He looked toward Brenda's house. She was on her porch, arms crossed, waiting for the show. "Yes," Davis said. "It is. False reporting. Misuse of 911. And since she admitted to doing it to initiate a CPS raid, that's harassment." "Ms. Jenkins," I said, "I want that file closed. I want it expunged. And I want a written statement from your department that the allegations were malicious and unfounded." "You'll get it," Jenkins said, her voice shaking with anger. "We don't take kindly to being used as pawns in a neighborhood dispute. I have real cases to deal with, real abused children. This woman wasted my time and state resources." "Officer," I said to Davis, "are you going to go over there?" Davis smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Oh, I'm going over there." "And Mr. Miller, keep that recording safe. You're going to need it for court." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "I'm not just going to court. I'm going to the bank." Davis marched across the street. I watched as he walked up Brenda's driveway. She was smiling at first, expecting to see him drag me away. Her smile faltered as he ignored me and came straight for her. I couldn't hear what he said this time. I had turned off the mics to save battery. But I saw her face. It went white. She started pointing at me, screaming. Davis shook his head. He pulled out his ticket book. He wrote her a citation. She threw her hands up. He handed it to her. She crumpled it up and threw it at him. Bad move. Davis spun her around. Handcuffs came out. My jaw dropped. I didn't expect an arrest. But throwing trash or evidence at a cop? That's assault or obstruction. They put Brenda in the back of the cruiser. As they drove away, she looked out the window at me. I raised my can of brown Play-Doh in a salute. But the war wasn't over. The criminal charges were just the appetizer. I looked at the timestamp on the recording. I looked at the emotional distress on my son's face when the cops arrived. I picked up the phone and called the meanest, nastiest lawyer in the tri-state area. A guy named Saul. Not really, his name is Robert, but he has Saul energy. "Robert," I said, "I have a defamation case, and I have a confession on tape." "Send it over," Robert said. I sent the file. 2 minutes later, he called back. "Mike, do you know how much a false report of child abuse that leads to a raid is worth in punitive damages? Especially when she admits malice?" "No," I said. "But I have a feeling it's more than the cost of a retaining wall." "We're going to take everything," Robert said. "Is she wealthy?" "She's retired. She has a pension. She has a 401k. And she owns her house outright." "Not for long," Robert purred. End of Part 1 and 2. Combined logic. Narrative flow established. Pausing here to allow user to digest or ask for the next massive chunk. Wait. I need to keep going to hit the word count. The prompt asked for the full story. I have written about 2,800 words of narrative so far, estimated. I need to accelerate into the lawsuit phase to flesh out the 15,000-word requirement. But again, 15K is impossible in one output. Decision. I will continue the narrative into the lawsuit and discovery phase to maximize the value of this response. The weeks following Brenda's arrest were a strange mix of quiet and chaos. The quiet came from the fact that Brenda was out on bail, but had been ordered by a judge to have no contact with us. She scurried from her car to her front door like a cockroach avoiding the light. The chaos came from the construction of the Great Wall of Mike. Tony and I decided to upgrade the project. Since we had to go to court anyway, we figured we might as well make the yard a fortress. We installed the sprinkler system I had designed in my head during sleepless nights. It was a high-pressure misting system meant for dust control, but if the wind was blowing just right, and in our valley, the wind blew south to north exactly toward Brenda's porch every afternoon at 4 p.m. It created a microclimate of damp humidity right on her patio furniture. But the real work was happening in Robert's office. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car. Robert was sliding a document across the mahogany desk. It was thick. It was heavy. "The complaint," Robert said. "We are filing for defamation per se. In our state, accusing someone of a crime, like child abuse, is defamation per se, meaning you don't even have to prove actual damages to win. But we have damages. We have the emotional distress of the children. We have the cost of the contractor delay. We have the invasion of privacy." "And the intentional infliction of emotional distress?" I asked. "Oh, that's the cherry on top. The recording where she admits she wanted to scare you into moving? That's the gold standard for IIED. We are asking for $250,000 in compensatory damages and $500,000 in punitive damages." I whistled. "She doesn't have $750,000 cash." "No," Robert smiled. "But she has a house worth $400,000, she has a retirement account, and she has an umbrella insurance policy. However, insurance usually doesn't cover intentional acts. If the jury finds she did this on purpose, which she admitted on tape, the insurance company will deny the claim. She will be personally liable." "So I'd be taking her retirement," I said. "You'd be taking her future," Robert corrected. "She tried to take your children, Mike. She tried to break your family. This isn't about money, it's about consequences." He was right. I thought about Sophie crying about the meatballs. I picked up the pen. Serve her. We decided to serve her on a Tuesday. I wanted to be there to see it. We didn't use a sheriff. We hired a private process server named Kenny. Kenny was a master of disguise. He didn't look like a cop. He looked like a pizza delivery guy. I was in the garage, tinkering with the lawnmower, watching the monitor. Kenny walked up Brenda's driveway, carrying a flat pizza box. He rang the doorbell. Brenda opened the door. She looked suspicious, but the smell of pepperoni is a powerful disarming agent. "Delivery for Brenda?" Kenny asked. "I didn't order a pizza," she said, but she leaned in. "Someone sent it to you. A peace offering, maybe?" Kenny smiled. She opened the screen door. "Well, I suppose." She took the box. "One more thing," Kenny said. He reached under the pizza box and pulled out the thick packet of legal documents. "You've been served." He dropped the papers on top of the pizza box and walked away. I saw the moment she realized what it was. She dropped the box. The pizza, a large pepperoni with extra cheese, slid out onto her porch mat, face down. The papers scattered. She stood there, mouth agape, staring at the headers. Civil summons. She looked across the street. I stepped out of the garage. I didn't wave. I just stood there. She screamed. It was a primal sound of frustration. She gathered the papers and slammed the door. The legal process is slow, but discovery is where the skeletons come out of the closet. Brenda hired a lawyer, a guy named Gil. Gil was a strip mall lawyer who mostly handled DUIs and slip and falls. He was out of his depth. They tried to get the case dismissed. Robert destroyed them in the hearing. The judge, A stern woman named Judge Holloway listened to the audio recording in her chambers. When they came back out, she denied the motion to dismiss immediately. Then came the deposition. This is the part they don't show in movies often enough. The deposition is where the truth comes out because there is no judge to save you, just a court reporter and a lawyer who wants to gut you. We sat in a conference room with no windows. Brenda sat across from me. She looked tired. Her hair wasn't as perfectly coiffed as usual. She refused to make eye contact. Robert started gently. He asked about her background, her time in the neighborhood. Then he started tightening the screws. "Ms. Peterson," Robert asked, "on the date of July 12th, you called 911 and Child Protective Services, correct?" "Yes," she whispered. "And you stated that you saw the Miller children eating human feces. Is that correct?" I said it looked like feces." "And on July 15th, you called your friend Linda. We have the transcript here. You stated, quote, 'I told the cops they were eating poop last time and they bought it.' Did you say that?" "I was venting. It was a private conversation. It was illegal for him to record me." "Actually," Robert smiled, "in this state, if your voice projects onto a neighboring property where there is no reasonable expectation of privacy, like shouting in your living room with the windows open while my client is on his own patio, it is admissible. The judge has already ruled on this. So did you say it?" She looked at her lawyer. Gil stared at the table. He knew they were cooked. "Yes," she spat. "I said it." "So you admitted that you lied to the police to get a reaction?" "I admitted that I did what was necessary," she exploded. She stood up, slamming her hands on the table. "You don't understand. He doesn't belong there. Him and his dirty truck and his loud kids and his lack of class. I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I was president of the HOA, and he comes in with his mud and his construction and ruins everything. I just wanted him gone. If I had to scare him a little, so be it." The room went silent. The court reporter's typing stopped for a second, then resumed furiously. "Scare him a little involved risking his children being placed in foster care?" Robert asked quietly. "Oh, please," she scoffed, sitting back. "Down. They wouldn't have taken them. They're white. It was just a warning." I felt the blood pound in my ears. Robert put a hand on my arm to restrain me. "Thank you, Ms. Peterson," Robert said, closing his folder. "I think we have everything we need." Gil looked like he wanted to dissolve into the carpet. He knew his client had just admitted to malice, racism, and abuse of process on the official record. We left the room. Robert turned to me in the hallway. "We aren't settling," he said. "We are taking this to a jury. They are going to hate her." The trial was set for 6 months later. In that time, Brenda's life fell apart. The neighborhood gossip mill, which she used to control, turned on her. The story of the arrest and the poop lie got out. People stopped inviting her to bridge. The mailman stopped waving. She became a prisoner in her own immaculate home. When the trial finally happened, it was swift. The jury was a mix of parents and working-class people. When they heard the recording, I saw a grandmother in the front row tighten her jaw so hard I thought her teeth would crack. When they heard her deposition outburst about me not belonging, the juror in the back row, a mechanic, crossed his arms and glared at her. My testimony was hard. I had to talk about how Leo had nightmares for weeks that the police lady was coming back to take him. I talked about how Sophie stopped playing in the yard. I talked about the shame of having my neighbors watch the police search my fridge. Brenda took the stand in her own defense. It was a disaster. She tried to cry, but it came off as fake. She tried to act like a concerned neighbor, but the cross-examination destroyed her. Robert forced her to admit she had called the police on 4 other neighbors in the last 5 years. She was a serial harasser. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they came back, the courtroom was silent. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Michael Miller. I closed my eyes. We award compensatory damages in the amount of $150,000. A gasp from Brenda. That was a lot. And, the foreman continued, looking directly at Brenda, we find that the defendant acted with actual malice and intent to harm. We award punitive damages in the amount of $600,000. Total, $750,000. Brenda fainted. Literally. She slumped over onto Gil's shoulder. The aftermath was the cleanup. Brenda's insurance company sent a letter the next day. Denied. They cited the intentional acts exclusion. They weren't paying a dime. Brenda had to pay. She didn't have $750,000 in the bank. We placed a lien on her house. We garnered her bank accounts. She had to liquidate her 401k. She had to sell her vacation condo in Florida. And ultimately, she had to sell the house. The day the for sale sign went up on 402 Maple Drive was the sunniest day of the year. I was in the yard with Tony. We were finally finishing the project, a nice stone patio with a built-in fire pit. You know, Tony said, leaning on a sledgehammer, it's going to be weird not having her watching us. I think I'll manage, I said. Brenda came out one last time. She was moving boxes into a small sedan. She looked 10 years older. She looked defeated. She looked at me. There was no fire left. Just ash. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice cracking. You took everything. I didn't take anything, Brenda, I said, picking up a shovel. You gave it to me. You bet your house on a lie and you lost. She got in her car and drove away. I never saw her again. A month later, a new family moved in. A young couple with a golden retriever and a baby on the way. The first thing the guy did was come over, introduce himself, and ask if I knew any good contractors to help him build a deck. I smiled, handed him a beer, and pointed at Tony. You came to the right place, I said. Just don't touch the retaining wall. It's a monument. To what? He asked. To the time I turned a mud pie into a retirement fund. I looked at Leo and Sophie. They were in the corner of the yard, covered in dirt, laughing. Go ahead, guys, I yelled. Get messy! And they did.